Blog Talk Radio.
I saw a cloud today. I watched it change its shape into a dinosaur, a whale, a mermaid, and a plane. The mermaid was pregnant, and then it turned into a Doberman, and the Doberman just turned back into the sky. Then I saw a real plane flying awfully low, man, dropping toxic chemicals all over my town. It says to help us, but then it's trying to hold us down and try and take away our clouds and replace them with their own crop dust in downtown. They save the ozone, but they don't care about your home. They're just trying out new ways of population control. We're young and we're bold. We can throw away their laws and replace them with our own. And the story will be told about the group of young adults who overthrew the throne, shone a light on just how bright this world could surely shine. Utopia works conceptually, but even in reality, to overthrow the state, we all gotta be in the right state of mind. I saw a bird today, I watched it fly away, and in my heart I knew I had to do the same. This town's really gotten to me, the streets smell rotten to me, and I still can't stand those goddamn fucking planes. But they're only flying now, someday they'll be bombing towns. They already started a secret chemical war. They've taken all we had and still want more. The sky is saturated with rain, I swear I'm not insane. It's going to pour, it's going to pour. So don't you use no phone, cause the government can bug anybody's home. So don't walk the streets alone, cause they might steal you in the night without your family being told. But we're young and we're bold, and we can throw away their laws and replace them with our own. And the story will be told about the group of young adults who overthrew the throne, shone a light on just how bright this world could surely shine. Utopia works conceptually, but even in reality, to overthrow the state, we all gotta be in the right state of mind. We all gotta be in the right state of mind. There's no telling just how far we can climb if we're just in the right state of mind.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in once again to the Universal Truth Evolution Blog Talk Radio channel. I am your host today, once again, Jerry Avalos, bringing you all kinds of interesting information of all varieties. That was a favorite here of Ian Hanawalt's Industrial Chemical Trails. Here's a good way to play us in and put us in that right frame of mind. After all, we are trying to manifest a magnificent future together, and we definitely have to have our intentions and our focus pure to do so. So one of the intentions I like doing while we're on the subject for this daily show is to talk about current events and news and how it pertains to some of the more, shall we say, fantastic information that we tend to cover here on Universal Truth Evolution. Seeing how grounding some of the more, just out there elements in a sense, to some, could be like extraterrestrials or Seagate, as we've talked about here on, with Aaron and such on this channel, and as many of you are familiar with his story. And how does this work on the grand scheme of things? And that's why we do bring guests on like we do who have who in their area of expertise. And I know I'm really looking forward to our rescheduled show with Stephen Bassett, so he can help really bridge that gap of just politics into exopolitics, which is the study of the extraterrestrial situation and how it really plays into everything on the grand scheme of things here on this wacky little planet we call Earth. So that being said, there's a couple of things I just do want to mention to just get the message out there. Once again, if anyone has or knows anyone who does music that pertains to these the subjects we talked about, or is aware of music, or something that might just fit the theme of the show in general, have them get in contact with us, and we'd be happy to play their songs and give mention of who they are and the website and anything else that might be available. We are trying to build a community here, after all, because we are trying to build that future together, and we have to do that as a community. So, and then also, if anyone else might be interested in maybe hosting from time to time here at the Universal Truth Evolution, contact myself or Tamara or any of the other UT team members, and we can talk about what you had in mind. We want to expand this show into being a network of sorts, and just like any other sort of radio station, it's not just one person's show. It's the collective, it's the group's effort. So we like to create a group of like minds who want to voice some of these things for all of us, and maybe help just bring some more perspective to the table and more variety. Because I'm sure like many people know at one point, no matter how much of a fan you are of anyone or anything, it gets boring, So it's good to have variety. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to anyone, please let us know. And with that, I thought I would kind of get into what I'm kind of thinking of as being the sort of theme of this hour, and how we play our roles in this grand story and movie that we're all sort of experiencing right now. And there's a lot of talk constantly in these kind of alternative news and media circles about a lot of things that we know, like the intentions of certain sectors in this world that would love to implement like martial law, for instance, or who want to force a economic collapse in order to consolidate their interests, things like that. A lot of us are very, very well aware of this, and I think a lot of us are also very, very well aware that this isn't new, and it's something that's been ongoing, and they've been trying this for years, and there's always something that comes up, though. I know I'm all of 32 years old right now, and in that relatively short time, I don't know how many doomsdays I've lived through, and it's funny, I don't know how I've actually, even recall, being very young, like, 7, maybe like 8, 9, maybe somewhere between there, hearing these same kind of stories from my friends, older brothers and cousins talking about, the wars and, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and then there's these gnarly things that will get you, that fly in space, and it's been around for I don't know how long, and I don't know if anyone's noticed yet, but we're all still here. So I kind of look at that as a very, good thing, obviously, and I also kind of point to that fact as being something to help calm some nerves when we get so much doomsdaying, honestly. And it's amazing how people don't even realize they're doing it. It's not so much about presenting information that's pertinent, like getting ready for, disasters or things like that. I mean, here in Southern California, we're experiencing severe storms, so we can get power outages. Our phones were actually out not too long ago, and you have to be prepared for stuff like that. But I think there's this sort of almost paranoia now, especially concerning stuff like the economic situation. I mean, because like you hear these suggestions of buying gold and silver. Well, yeah, there's truth to the fact that gold and silver remain stable in the market over these many centuries now. But then therein lies one of the problems, though, is because you have to know how to sell the gold or silver, or you have to have something to do with it, or else it means absolutely crap to you. Especially if you're only trading paper on a market. It doesn't even mean that there might not even actually be gold there you're buying. So if you are going to buy gold or silver, actually buy the gold and actual silver. And then, like I said, you have to know how to unload that or use it in some way that benefits you. Because if not, who cares? In terms of investment, you're better off, getting something that can help you create some stuff that might be non-perishable, like a dehydrator or something like that. You're better off investing in a dehydrator than you are in gold or silver, trust me, for many reasons. Even if nothing ever happens, you can create all kinds of healthy, like alternative, breads and such, with dehydrators that have absolutely none of the GMO stuff or none of the gluten, and you can make this stuff that's outstanding, and you didn't have to barter with anyone with your gold chain on the street for whatever. And that all still fits into people's modalities, be they paranoid or not, of preparedness, of doing something like that, or taking that money and investing in a small, kitchen hydroponic setup where you can grow some tomatoes or just some kind of, vegetables like that. Because realistically, I hear a lot of things about, being prepared and what we need to do and all this other stuff, and it all seems to somehow amount to some kind of gay jamboree out in the wilderness where we all have our survival skills. And when I say gay, I mean obnoxiously, flamboyantly happy. So, where you're just like, okay, because I don't understand how all of us can make this mass exodus to the hills. Isn't that, conspicuous? Doesn't that make you an easier target, being out in the middle of nowhere by yourself especially? So I always maintain that if we're in the cities, like the majority of people on this planet are, we have to stay together. We have to stick together, and we have to voice ourselves and say no to the things before they even get to some kind of stage like that. And when they do, that makes it even all the more important that we actually do stick together. And you have to think about these things practically, not just kind of like if, then, blah, 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 scenarios charged by emotional whatever due to past experiences. We have to look past that and kind of look and be realistic, because realistically, we all do rely on each other for everything in this world now, and there's almost nothing you can do about it unless you do go off and live by yourself somewhere and this and that, which is fine. Go ahead. Rock on. I think that's cool. But not everyone can do that. So, we hear this all the time. What can we do? Well, I kind of named some stuff right there. Just get some kind of sustainable food. Know ways to purify water. There's very simple ways like boiling it, and there's also different kind of additives you can use to purify water. In the event your electricity is knocked out, or there's something goes down, and here we have earthquakes. If there's a major earthquake and we need to kind of cook our own stuff without using the gas lines and electricity, things like that. But that's really pretty much what you can do, and especially for those of us in the United States. I mean, I think it's always a good idea to exercise your Second Amendment rights, just because it's fun. But yeah. So I wanted to speak about that because I had been seeing a lot about this, and just kind of I think everyone's really feeling something, kind of this shift. Everyone really wants a shift coming on. Everyone wants a change. And I think that's really manifesting in the world in all these different ways, and you're seeing a lot of tension. And so rather espousing kind of I feel something's coming, everyone, kind of vibe, man, I wanted to be able to just say, I think we're all feeling this change, but the more we put our attentions towards what we want, the less likely we're going to get what we don't want. So especially when we're already, taking steps to ensure the quality of life that we really want. And like I said, there's so many times that these things just really haven't manifested, and we know it's not due to the lack of effort, right? I think we even have examples such as obviously the fluoride in the water, even anomalous virus pattern movements like the H1N1, things like that. To know that, and there's always been plenty of wars, so we know the agenda has been going strong with people. It's not like it's new, right? And there's always something that comes up, and there's an expression that's kind of a truncated expression for the most part, but and some people probably have heard this, but it's called deus ex, and it's actually short for a Latin term for deus ex machina, which means God out of the machine. Wikipedia's definition says it's a plot device whereby a seemingly inexplicable problem is suddenly and abruptly solved with the contrived and unexpected intervention of some new character, ability, or object. Okay, this is what I tend to refer to when you think about why we're still here, because apparently we've been on that cusp who knows how many times on major scales, and we're still here. Well, this concept, I feel, is really kind of an embodiment of that, which is also kind of a manifestation of what some might call divine timing or divine will, in a sense. And it's funny because I know, like, some who really, really kind of are like, oh, we can't be love and light all the time. Oh, get a little bit when you say something like divine timing. But sorry, there's nothing else really to call it, because we can't really explain, this sort of universal consciousness that has been demonstrated in the labs. That there's some kind of guided, organized design to this universe. And so yeah, there's a reason why. So let's keep this in mind. That's not to say that everything is all happy, fluffy, and light. Not at all. I'm just saying that it's like, I think the records in history and fossil records alone will tell us that this Earth has been relatively stable, or at least predictably stable in many ways, for eons. So, and yeah, we are coming to a change, and so we just have to put our minds on that change that we really want. Like some of the things, including, bridging the stars with the inner world and such, and really kind of coming to our being. And so one of the things that actually happened in the news recently, and I'll be posting links, of course, in the chat room for those who want to look into more of these, and we definitely gotta get better. I definitely gotta get better about archiving some of these links in the archive, so that those who listen to the archive can check out some of these things I'm referencing. But this news article is actually very cool. It has to do with disclosure, which I know is a subject very close to all of our hearts here. With New Zealand releasing UFO government files. So once again, another major country releasing their information concerning extraterrestrials. And these apparently are hundreds of documents detailing sightings and claims of different UFOs from 1954 all the way to 2009, which includes, I guess, drawings of different ships or crafts, as well as alleged samples of alien writing. So I know I'm going to try to track some of those down because I'm not sure if many of you actually follow this, but when these files get released, they actually are archived generally on some of the government sites, and so you actually can find these at .gov URLs usually too. So like for those who are contending with some I don't know, some minds who are freshly awoken or not quite awoken yet, but are still feeling the need to engage you in this, point to things like that and find some of these links. I don't have them handy right now, or else I'd post them. But a lot of these files that came out of like the UK and stuff like that, you can find them in their national archives on their website. So when someone says, well, that this stuff isn't real, it's all whatever, it's like, well, then how come, they had this guy shoot at something that did a maneuver that, by all rights and purposes, isn't supposed to happen right now. So you can do that to help bring that awareness to everyone, and in as many ways as possible, especially on this subject, because I think that a lot of us listening and who follow, you can say ufology or exopolitics, know that this is the biggest issue, really, at its heart, that we, as a planet, have to understand, because it is like a big step in evolution to take our place, in the stars one way or another. Whether we're able to zip off everywhere some of these other races might be able to is immaterial. It's more of understanding that it's possible and that we can do it on our own accord. So yeah, it's very. This is a huge subject, especially because it gets into things like energy, and so we can stop burning dead things for fuel. with the fossil fuels and the coal and all this other crap. We got to stop burning dead things for fuel. We haven't stopped that since, I don't know how long in ancient history, and I think it's funny that now we're even finding out, through some awesome research from people like Dr. Carmen Bolter, who have gone to Egypt and they're now seeing the evidence that they were using electricity back then, and as well as probably some other stuff we didn't understand. So it's like, even back then they weren't burning dead things. You know what I mean? So I think the more we talk about this and the more we put it in, make it common terms, even in common conversation, the quicker all these things manifest. And obviously, it has to do with more than just us, how some people might say crazies or just whatever, out here, because here we have these governments saying, well, yeah, there's stuff that we don't know what it is. And so I think that should be enough for anyone who's truly discerning, who hasn't actually went and actively questioned on their own to find the answers to these things, to at least kind of have that enough to really question now, to really look at some evidence and really start getting down to it, because it's huge. It changes everything, and and so it's interesting to see when we get this kind of disclosure, and it's and as we can see, a lot of changes in the earth in general, including just the political platforms, and just as we're seeing all these the proverbial pieces of the chessboard kind of moving around, and even in the UFO situation, considering stuff like what happened in China recently too, with the repeated sightings over the airports, and they have the closures. I know there's still a lot of discussion on what that actually could have been. And to me personally, I kind of felt that it was military from day one. I really don't have any evidence to prove that. It's just kind of my gut feeling or my intuition there saying that it just seemed like at least the majority of those were probably military, demonstrating something, because China right now, whether people realize it or not, are really starting to exert their will, their clout in the world market and in the world theater in general. There's actually just a report recently about China saying that they would actually bail out some debt-ridden nations like Greece and Portugal apparently, and they have apparently $2.7 trillion in their overseas investment fund. So they're saying, China is willing to invest in certain countries. And you got to remember, when they're talking about this, it's not like they're saying, it sounds like a business transaction because it essentially is, but you got to remember on the terms that they're talking, they're like, yeah, we'll buy your country. It would be a nice sort of, roundabout province of China for us to own you and your debt. and as they put it, they make no qualms about it. They talk about humiliation. This is fresh humiliation for Eurozone, which maybe that's good. Maybe the Chinese need to humiliate some people. Who knows? But I think it's interesting because then you have to ask, well, who's in control of that money, and that in China, and this is where we actually do get into some legitimate, political snafus. Because, as we know here, especially in the United States, and I know as many of you all over the world recognize that, within any government, there's obviously kind of polls happening within there too. You have the ones who really are doing good and they really are helping people and they really do believe in what they're doing and they're doing a great job. And there's other ones who really just don't care and are really out for their own interest. So that kind of goes across the board. So when you have plays like this, where China's like, we'll buy that. You have to ask why. Are they really being the concerned parent here? We're going to humiliate you. We're going to ground you a little bit, Portugal and Greece, and we're going to make you think about what you did. and then everything will be merry. I don't know. Someone doesn't tell me it's going to be that easy. So like I said, I think it's interesting that we know this, that we see these intentions kind of, being put out there. But at the same time, I think maybe Greece does need a little bit of humiliation because, I think they're spending time squabbling over things like, putting a Greek goddess that's nude on their passport rather than maybe, dealing with their whole financial situation. It's like art's, man, and it's like, if you're ashamed of the human body, that's on you. You know what I mean? And this is a marble statue. Get over it. Meanwhile, your country is literally burning. So I think it might behoove them to maybe talk to some of the other financial institutions besides the Chinese and shop around with their debt. Because I think, right now is it's an interesting market. So, which, and I think, too, China, like just kind of staying on China right now, because they are making some interesting leaps and statements, and actually they're not even necessarily making the statements, right there out in the open to them, but we're just getting this intel from other countries, including, the United States and our own assessments, because China apparently has enough military might now to change the strategic theater in the Pacific due to a new missile, apparently, that they have deployed and is now in effect. It's called the Dongfeng 21D missile, which has been dubbed a game changer by our defense analysts here in the United States. What makes this missile so important to the Chinese military is that they can now target and essentially destroy aircraft carriers with this missile without the aircraft carrier having any kind of defense against it, because he's using satellites and over-the-horizon radar. They can just launch this sucker at whatever aircraft carrier comes in a range that they don't want them to be in, such as Taiwan, which is a hotly contested area for those who haven't looked too much into Asian affairs, because in many ways China still feels that Taiwan is theirs, and so they were like, Taiwan is ours. So in one of these days, we'll get you back, buddy. And meanwhile, I'm sure the Taiwanese are like, no, we prefer not to. And so that's always been like, especially the United States and China's, hotbed of activity. So now with that missile, they actually do have a way to keep our aircraft carriers from getting into Taiwan, or at least giving us a hard time conventionally to do that. But I think this is an interesting development to kind of be released now, considering some of what we know about what goes on behind the scenes, at least in the United States military, and I'm sure to some degree China and the Soviet Union and the UK, of course, as well as Australia. So it makes me wonder how much of a game changer these things like this truly are. Considering what we've heard about things like the TR-3B and the I think it's DD, the United States has. What does a ballistic missile mean to something like that? Oh, it means stationary object. So, that's what I'm wondering. Does this really change the game all that much, or is this really just another sort of, cliffhanger for the daily soap opera people who are believing the illusion that China and the United States have any interest in really tangling horns right now? Because as we know, that fear is used to manipulate. Within that machine that they have created, they use that fear and anger to motivate. And so when we get things like this in the news, well, what does that tend to do to the paranoid base? Well, it tends to mean that we need to spend more money on the military. So And I think we already spend quite a bit on the military. Maybe we just got to, just stop playing the games and just be like, well, here's what's going on. There are some funky things flying up in the skies above us that we don't know about. We have some of their technology. We've been zipping around with it. And really all this is posturing to settle some financial debts that particular group, corporate entities have with each other. And they're making all of you die and starve for it. How does that feel? See, maybe I'd hope their writers do a better job than that. I think that was probably a little to the point because maybe not quite politically correct enough. But it's the truth. So, so that's what I say. These things like these always kind of intrigue me because on one hand you do have a legitimate conventional war that's going on, and it's messy, it's gnarly, it's ugly. And then on the other hand, you kind of look at what's going on, like I said, above the sky, even in a sense, and you wonder what's it all for. So yeah, and China is also. I actually just misplaced my link here, but it's actually something that just came up in all the news right now at this point. But China also decided to cut back on their exports of precious metals. Which means a lot of the electronics makers and such are really going to probably be feeling this, which means that some components in certain devices might go up, because I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why they've lowered production, because despite what everyone, at least a lot of the media reports might say, especially the Fox brand might tell you, working conditions and a lot of other things in China aren't very cozy. And one of the iPhone factories over there had something like 11 or 12 suicides at the same factory. Kind of give people an idea of what kind of working conditions these people are going through to give mostly Americans their freaking iPhones, right? So yeah, on top of the fact that does actually once again exercise their economic clout in order to, once again exert their will in some way. Because actually, just a good time to mention here, Ben Murphy and I will be on Project Information Generation Radio Thursday, tomorrow evening, where we're going to be talking about Asia. Actually, there is we have Ben Murphy and I have a different view of what Benjamin Fulford and some other analysts kind of think of what's going on in Asia right now. Just because, it doesn't make any sense to me. Big badass Ben Murphy and I, what these other guys are saying, it just doesn't add up. And so, not to making accusations, we all have our opinions on how we think things may play out. We're just saying ours is different, and we're going to present it because of things like this, because of these moves that are being made by the Chinese government. And as the Google CEO recently said, China runs itself like a corporation. There are one big business, and this business is very shrewd. They know. I'm sure they knew why they were buying all the debt that they did, and I'm sure they're still calculating, what else can we get that's going to put us in better position later, especially in relation to places like Greece and Portugal. There's obviously quite a bit of interest in those two areas in particular. Even just based on the amount of shipping commerce that goes to those two countries alone, things like that. So yeah, it's very, very interesting to see how things are shaping up here, and that we really are seeing China, really making some moves of their own, which I think a lot of us kind of foresaw, especially because they're in a relatively desperate situation too, because a lot of people don't agree with what's going on over there with their ruling as well. And so there has to be something done, one way or another. And so we're seeing all of this being played out right now. So the more we are informed on it, the more we can really, help inform others to make better decisions about what what they feel they need to prepare for and how they may need to vote or who they may need to tell what to. Because as I was saying earlier, there seems to be this almost hysteria going on right now because I think everyone is so ready for change. They're ready for change, and we're tired of the old guard. I found it hilarious today, actually, in particular, considering some of the dialogue I've just been seeing going on in my own circles concerning this kind of preparedness and all these other things. That I check out Huffington Post today, and I see an article about Ashton Kutcher, of all people, preparing for the end of days. I'm just like, oh, my God. I can imagine him and Demi, getting the rucksacks, heading out to the hills of Topanga, and roughing it for a few hours or something to get ready for the inevitable economic collapse, nuclear blast / viral assault / Casey, California collapse, all at the same time. Why not? Really bad day in L.A. All that good stuff. But see, this is the funny thing to me, because it's kind of like, well, where you have to ask once again, well, where is this coming from? I have a feeling that, our good buddy Ashton probably checks out a lot of the same stuff that we do. Hell, he might even be hear this someday, or might hear something like this, or maybe even checked out Aaron's stuff before. Who knows? But either way, like I said, you can see it's obvious how people present this information. It's not to say that that none of it's not true. Like, I think that's what I was saying in the beginning. It's kind of like, no, we know their intentions. We know that they really, truly, want to kill us. It's not a big mystery. But like I said, that Deus Ex, whatever that object, whatever that person, that character that comes up, that changes it. And it's not necessarily a mystical thing. I'm sure, some of the people here who might have some insight, personal first-hand insight into one of these potential Earth-destroying, experiences, where something came up, an object, a character, or whatever, and it didn't happen, obviously. And that's what I'm talking about. And, but I think, too, that a lot of this, in a sense, is a transference. It's a transference, obviously, of one's own fear right back at oneself in order to bring to light their own insecurity about who they are, or to make them feel like it's okay to be who they actually do want to be. You know what I mean? Like, now I have a reason to go running and in the hills, like Ashton was talking about. But did you need that reason before? That's why I kind of question. It's like, well, how come the idea of all of this coming to an end motivates you to adhere to it more? Doesn't that really expose some kind of addiction, actually? Because now it almost shows it's like, oh, let me clamor on to this life. Let me attach to this life even more because I'm afraid of losing it. Because it's kind of like if we look at this actually from a very practical point of view, let's remove our emotional charge from our life or just whatever else, knowing that we're just part of a system here that's moving along, and that we know that at one point you're going to die. if you were plopped out or cut out of the gut as a human being, you're going to die. So, what are you worried about? And it doesn't make any sense. Once again, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying we have to have a death wish that we got to just be like, oh yeah, let me just die any moment. It's not what I'm talking about. Or we have to be reckless. It has to do with the fact that it's like, know what you want to do and do it. And if you have a certain lifestyle that you like, practically look at yourself and ask, what do I have to do to sustain this in the event of, a blackout, a major hurricane, all these other things. Who knows, if the government does lose their mind and tries to enact martial law, which I really, seriously, I can't stress this enough, people. This is not a viable option. It's not. Okay, the logistics on implementing martial law in the United States or the UK or Australia, places like that, are you just can't do it. You just can't do it. let alone you're assuming that everyone, all the military and stuff like that would be like, okay, yeah, let me go ahead and turn my guns on my neighbors, and maybe even in my own town. It's like, no, it's just not going to happen, people. It's just not. I think, not to spread any like crazy warfare mongering or anything like that. You'd sooner see the fifth generation cyber soldiers that Aaron talked about doing something like that. But like I said, if that happened, then that's a whole other can of worms opens up. So it's like, like I said, it's the logistical problem of like trying to implement these things. And so that's why you hear, even if you follow people like David Icke and such, or Michael Zarian, you'll hear them talk about these plans that have been laid for centuries, so specifically so they don't have to do things like that. So they're smart. They are smart. Okay, they, quote-unquote, whoever they, quote-unquote, are smart. I have to respect them for that, because if they weren't, this whole illusion would have fell apart a long time ago. So it's not going to be that simple. There's not going to be like, oh, one of these days there's going to be a bomb going off and now there's martial law. No, it just won't work. I can see for one day them kind of a couple of days having a curfew if there was like a major attack in, say, United States, UK, Australia. But it's like after that, it better lift. And they know that. Especially in we can't take away freedoms from a society like this. Hell, I mean, we see what happens when they outlaw porn apps on the iPhone. You know what I mean? Do you think people are going to stand idly by while they're like, you can't even go out at night? Yeah, right. It's not going to happen here. No way. Because you just created too much of a resistance. So, and the interesting thing that while the United States might feel very much like a national socialist setup, which in a sense it kind of is, the people here aren't Nazis. The American people who and everyone in the world, I happen to reside in an area that is known for being one of the most conservative in the nation. It's not all like that, but there's a large affluent part of this area that has a lot of money, came from a lot of military background, all this other stuff. So I'm right smack dab in the middle of a lot of these goofy people who really believe the rah-rah rhetoric. And I'm just telling you that even they aren't necessarily Nazi-like. I mean, they're, I think people don't realize in the world is that how much we've been lied to here in the United States. A lot of these people who still do believe the rah-rah rhetoric are just naive. They're naive. They really don't know any of this stuff that we're talking about. They have absolutely no clue about it because they wouldn't fathom, that the government would hide something that severe for them, especially if they're on the inside. So it has a lot to do with that. And the people here don't believe in the war. They really don't. Everyone you talk to on the streets, no one supports the war. Everyone says, let's bring them home. It's like I've seen the change from 9/11 to now. I mean, you used to see the flags everywhere. Remember 9/11? Blah, blah, together we stand on, or whatever the hell they say. It was annoying, and it all eventually faded because as we start seeing the truth come out, especially in the instance of Iraq, it all falls apart. So this is what I'm saying. Like, the reason why I bring this up is because things are coming up that Deus Ex is in effect, and and I'm not necessarily being all love and light and happy rainbows, unicorns, fluffy fairies here. Yes, fluffy fairies too. And I'm not necessarily doing that. I'm just being practical and making observations, because it has nothing to do with kind of like, oh, well, you'd never met these people, or it's like, well, yeah, we don't really need to. We see their intentions clearly, and we see kind of how some of these people are. They're very greedy, and they like to have power. And it's kind of like, right now, they have the money and the power. So it doesn't make sense to cause some of it to slip away by trying to forcibly enact more. It just doesn't make sense. So it's not logical. And in fact, when you have things like this happen, when you have, it does them a favor to put people in fear of these things. It really does. So like Alex Jones, for all the good he's done, and trust me, I really do appreciate Alex Jones for a lot of different reasons. I don't agree with the way he necessarily presents all of his information because he comes from fear and anger. And when you're using that, you're doing them a favor. You're doing them a favor. Because that really is not you're really not at your full, potential when you're in a state of rage or anger or fear. It's part of the fight or flight response. You're actually reverting now to that reptilian brain, the primal brain. So when you're in that mode, you actually aren't functioning at your highest functions. So you need to look. We need to recognize what our anger or fear is trying to tell us. Of course, like you don't squish it down. You don't forget about it. You don't pretend things are all fine and dandy, But you recognize, what is the anger trying to tell me? You listen to it, and then you ask yourself, what can I do about it? And then you do what you can. And if you can't do anything, well, then, try to have some fun, because there ain't nothing you can do about it anyways, right? So, this is why I'm saying this, because, like I said, these daily shows is where I try to bring everything together as much as I've seen, and just try to share what my perspective, and then if anyone has questions, of course, I know I was didn't bring that up, but if you do have questions, feel free to post them. Let people know that I'm not unrealistic about how I view things, and while I come from a very optimistic, positive point of view, I definitely take into account everything that's going on. And honestly, if I thought that something was coming our way that was pretty gnarly, I would tell everyone. I'm not going to be like, oh, don't worry, everyone, while the bomb falls. Of course not. That's not what I'm doing. That's not what That's not what I want to do. But I'm just saying, from my perspective, seeing what I have, and and it's interesting because I didn't even realize how much it would make a difference. But even when I was very young, in the single digits still, I would watch the news. I would pay attention to what people are saying about the country, and so it's interesting seeing how things have changed from Reagan to now. I'm definitely one person who remembers Reagan's years, and they sucked. They really sucked. Okay, so if anyone's like, "Oh, Reagan was great," he sucked. He sucked so bad. So that whole time really sucked. Unless you were, once again, one of the people at these large corporations, the same ones right now who are pretty much screwing everyone. So and you can go back to those 80s once again, and you can see Ron Paul with a little more hair and color, and it's how you could transpose what he said then over what he's saying now. So once again, this isn't new. They've been trying this for decades, actually centuries. This plan has been in effect. So yeah, it's like we said. It's not like like they haven't had a chance. It's not like they stopped trying. It's just that things keep coming up. They just keep coming up, and we have to be realistic, because as we're finding out, things are different than what we've been told. A lot of the stuff that they told us in school or Black didn't tell us about, it's true. It's all true. And so when you have interesting things, even once again, here's just a little tangibility, for those who don't believe in stuff like extraterrestrials, and maybe how these ancient civilizations might have been conversing with them as well, and all those other things. Well, there's a link I just posted in the chat room, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this elsewhere, about the find in Tel Aviv about the tooth, 400,000-year-old tooth of a modern human. So we can add this once again to the list of archaeological anomalies, quote unquote, that place modern human being some places that we're not supposed to. Once again. So there's just so many of these things that keep coming up. Actually, I do have a caller here, so I'm going to go ahead and see what our caller has to say. And hello, caller. You are on the air.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So,
good.
This is Ben, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I was making sure there. So how's it going there, Ben?
That's good. I'm just I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a very big day. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's interesting that I think we have all this news coming out now that's gonna help us make some of these points here. So.
I hope so.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like I said, I found it kind of interesting now that China's making this move with like the Portugal and Greece, and then now with their export too, like all at the same time, on top of this missile intel. I mean, it's all like within a week of each other.
Well, you see, that's the thing though. The missile intel is it's nonsense. Who cares? They've got a missile that can hit a carrier. Wow, we got missiles that can level cities. So do they. We've all got sticks and bigger sticks than each other. That's why they won't use them. At the end of the day, they're a business. It's not good business to go to war because it ends up costing them money. It costs money. China's not in the business of spending money. They're in the business of making it, and they're very good at it. Because what they don't want to. Now, this is where the U.S. might engage something. This is where the problem will come from. Because then they might say, well, okay, we're not handing over our country, and that's when they might initiate something and spin it and say, well, this is what China did. And we all know that they're not willing to hand the reins over easily. But at the end of the day, it's up to who's in charge and the powers that be and what games they want to play, because at the end of the day, that's what they're doing. They're playing their games. They did it in the Second World War, and if, God forbid, if there was a third, this is what they do. But I really don't think we're heading down that path. Everything for now says we're not, because they're setting up too much other stuff. That doesn't mean there won't be attacks and there won't be tension and there won't be skirmishes or conventional issues, but it does mean that, different things are going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree there, because I think that like kind of how I was saying earlier, that this whole thing, it just seems like it's more crap to perpetuate the melodrama. And yeah, you're right. I think that until enough U.S. citizens oust some of these tricksters, basically, who would spin something, to try to go to war, it's like, yeah, I can see these little skirmishes happening, but I think so many people are just not interested in war right now that it's a hard sell. So I think that yeah, we're going to have to come to some economic agreements here, because I know China does own a significant portion of some of those bonds from the United States. So.
Absolutely, but it's like China and Thailand. It's like, how much money do we owe them now? It's not even. It's insane. And you've got guys like Forford that come out and spin their little stories about, 100,000 professional assassins getting ready to make a move. Now, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure if Forford actually knows his Asian history, but the Illuminati were, or even the Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them, they were in China too, bro. It ain't just the Catholicism and things like that. Where do they think that alchemy and sorcery came from and things like that? Go back and look at it again, then come back and start spinning stories, because the history says a completely different tale. The first emperor, half man, half fish. Let's, need we say more? And the level of control that they have is just, their system is a better system, but it doesn't mean there isn't poverty, obviously. It's not a completely communist country, because you have issues with the country. You have issues with poverty, people, and the idea of communism is everybody is the same, and obviously in China it's not the case.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to be made, just because I think that there's so much mislabeling of political ideology these days. I think it's no wonder people get confused, because I think, like how you said, there's obviously not communists in China, because you have poverty and you have extremely rich. So just like here in America, we're not socialists because we don't get crap from the government. So how can we be socialist?
That's right. And we also have the talk. We have talk of and the triad and the Yakuza are actually working together, which is completely implausible because of the actual war that's actually going on, documented right now in places like Malaysia and some of the, especially the Indonesian islands where they have so much tension and crap going on. You go to Jakarta and it's all around you. You go to Sumatra and it's all around you. They're literally in the streets killing each other. They're not obviously doing a very good job if they're working with each other. And with a group like that, the last thing you do is come out and say, this is what they're doing, because you won't be breathing very much longer. I mean, let me put it this way. There was a WWE wrestler that was asked in the US to do a Yakuza bit, and they said to the guy, Tajiri, that was his name, did you want to do like a Yakuza spin? And he said, hell no, because if he did it, he would have become a target, and you'd probably be dead by now, because they don't like you, they kill you. If you're actually encroaching or possibly drawing attention to them, they don't like that, because the whole idea with organizations like that is to draw attention away from them, which is what they like. They don't want eyes on them, they don't want heat on them, they don't want these groups looking at them, and they sure as hell don't want some guy talking about them saying this is exactly what they're doing, because that's exactly what they're not doing. And that's especially true for the triad, and I know that firsthand because they never talk about what they do. You never talk about what they do, because if you do, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and it just doesn't make sense to have, especially like Fulford, it's not like I'm totally disrespect the guy or anything, but it just never made sense to me. It's like they're just gonna elect you the spokesman of the underworld. I mean, that never competed. You know what I mean? I definitely think, go ahead.
Because if I can, that's the whole thing. Then they don't have 1,000 assassins. They're not making any moves, and they're just leaving the guy alone, because at the end of the day, they're doing their own thing, which is the same thing you've always done: drugs, prostitution, gambling, enslavement, child slavery, all that stuff, all that organized crime. That's what they're into. That's what they do. The rest of it doesn't matter, as long as they're getting money and doing what they're doing and being good businessmen, which is what they're all about. Even if it is organized crime. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing I think that a lot of people don't get, is because I think whether people realize it or not, they have a charge, an emotional charge around issues, but not realizing that the people who are doing some of these things have absolutely no charge. They don't care. They're just like, good business.
That's right.
So it doesn't really matter to them. That's what I think that people have to understand. And I did find it kind of funny that all of a sudden, Benjamin Fulford was like I said, this underworld spokesperson for a group that doesn't tend to like to advertise. So let alone it doesn't make sense as an assassin. Like, oh, we're gonna assassinate you. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's a great strategic move. Have a guy get up there and say, we have all these assassins going to assassinate you. No, you just do it. It's just,
Yeah, and the term ninja being used so loosely. I know there's only like 3 real traditional, even if they are traditional, because ninjas are literally legend. The martial arts are a mishmash of everything. There's only like 3 legitimate schools, and they're all in Japan. If they train any assassins for the triad, it's always out of Nepal, because they use ex-Gurkhas to train them, because the Gurkhas are damn good at what they do. And it's nothing to do with ninjas. You can't be throwing that word around. That's just fantasy. It's fantasy.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just for our listening audience here. I don't know if Ben, if you have a few more minutes, we can keep going. Although the streaming is going to end in a few minutes. Do you want to just kind of finish some thoughts here? Okay, all right, everyone. The stream is probably going to stop in another 30 seconds here, but you can catch what Ben and I will be going off about a little bit more here in the archives. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and check out the archives to get even more goodness. So talk to everyone next time. So Ben, I think this whole issue with Asia obviously needs a lot of examination, considering Asia's role in the future, and how there's going to be so many of them, honestly.
Well, that goes down to what George Green said. Now, George Green had a good point about the amount of people under the age of 45 in places like China, and how they're workable because of who they are, and that makes a lot of sense. But to completely get rid of another country to do that, I don't think makes sense, because at the end of the day, the problem that people have got to understand are, you got the powers that be that want to play the game and they want to end certain things, but also one of the problems that I believe they've run into is also the fact that they've become comfortable. They've got children, they've got children's children, and those children have friends, and it's a little bit too easy now. They know what they should do, and they know what they should go back to, and they know how things should go back to, but it's a question of, well, we'll just keep putting it off, we'll keep putting it off, we'll keep putting it off. In the end, it's just not going to happen, because they're too damn comfortable. They don't want to do it. They don't want to go down that road, because it's just not viable for them. Not anymore. Maybe it was 50 years ago, when they could have turned the clocks back, and it wouldn't have mattered so much. But right now, they're in that level of that comfort zone where, you know what, it's just too easy.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. And I think that, that reason itself, I think, is the reason why we more than likely aren't going to see some of the large conflicts that everyone's so afraid of, because it's kind of like everyone's thinking, why the hell would I do that?
Right.
Because I think there already is such a good system, already well working system of manipulation and control and everything. Why would you mess it up? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
To do what? Cause especially when you consider, because one thing I always thought was fascinating about Asia versus America is how in Asia, the underworld, so to speak, is more openly recognized. And how over here it's like everyone tries to pretend there's no crime, you know what I mean? And so that's one thing that I always kind of thought was interesting about the difference between the cultures. Honestly, I think we know here that that's while the facade is let's pretend it doesn't happen, behind the scenes we know these guys deal with each other. So I think in a sense it's like in a way, I think a lot of Western countries can model themselves after the fact that, yes, dude, there's going to be these people. There's going to be them. And yeah, we have to really figure out what this all means to all of us and how we're going to actually, make the changes where we want to make them. Because obviously there's been a lot of snafus created with all the financial dealings that's going on, and as you and I, Ben, we didn't do it. It's the people at Goldman Sachs and all this other stuff. So I mean, I honestly appreciate some of these organizations where they're like, oh, you guys. It's like, yeah, we're the same way, man. So I don't know. What do you think that how do you see the Asian just in general, all the different Asian factions? How do you see them handling the situation in terms of the financial conditions of the world right now?
Well, I think that in many parts for them it's just business as usual, because they don't see any difference, so to speak. The problem is America's America and China's China and Indonesia's Indonesia. Their parts of Indonesia are third world, parts of Indonesia are extremely corrupt, and they have lots of money. It's just the way it's been, which is why they've always had rebels and they've always had rioting against the government and the levels of corruption and things that go on there. But I think the biggest thing would be the fact that people, especially China, they're all over there saying exactly the same thing we're saying about them, they're saying about us. Mm-hmm. And that's because they're being told by their government the same things. And that's just how it's always going to be. Mm-hmm. I've been over there when they've spun stories about the US and vice versa. As I said, it's a game. It's ping pong. It's back and forth, and that's the business that the media's in. And unfortunately, that's what they buy into. People buy into it just as easily.
Yeah, and I think that's why it makes it so important that hopefully, sooner than later, countries like China will have more unrestricted internet access. Because I think as we make more connections, as individuals, over the internet around the world, it makes that illusion a lot harder for them to just put up, because now we know someone in China, we know someone in Thailand, someone in Thailand knows someone in America, you know what I mean? And we can kind of say, yeah, that thing happened right in my town, and what they're saying isn't true, you know what I mean? So
that's right.
So we need more of that networking to go on. I think obviously that's the thing that I know in China they've really have been trying their hardest to keep people inhibited in that sense. But yeah, I'm really hoping that to see more conductivity, if you will, between all the countries and really I'm actually asking really for, especially in the archives, help us Americans understand, the world, because it's like, yeah, they really did number on us in terms of like how they taught us about other countries. It was ridiculous, horribly slanted, and so that's one thing like that. I think a lot of people don't realize when they're dealing with Americans, it's like like a lot of people don't know any better. They didn't know any better there, So it's a big problem for sure, and I think that a lot of Americans now are recognizing, how much of a problem we created for the world, and that's why I think it's good that we're talking about Asia, because Asia is really, emerging in a lot of ways, or re-emerging in a lot of ways, shall we say.
One of the things that I was talking to Aaron about was when he gave me that, when he gave us that message that he played back to himself, and he started talking about Section 8 and I believe it was Cambodia, and I just sent him some back information on the U.S. with the CIA, how they helped orchestrate some stuff with Pol Pot, and how the group that was in power, the tech, I can't remember what they called, tech something, didn't like the fact of that. That's why they actually had him arrested in the end, because he was told, go forward, cause as much damage and commotion as you can, create a distraction, because this is what we wanted to build. And at the time it was like a different section, because it was like one big military op, U.S. military op. So they built it. They had people perfect new kinds of weapons in there, all kinds of stuff like that. So it was it went through different sections, Section 4, Section 5, and in the end it became Section 8, and that's one of the bases, one of the hot spots. But a lot of the commotion around it was there to actually protect what the CIA had actually set up. So when they had all that commotion with the Khmer Rouge and the killing fields, that was actually what it was all about. But people don't know that, because they don't know the history of that, because they never spent any time in that country, and nobody ever talks about it, because of course it's classified information and nobody ever does any research on that, so they don't know. So how can they link military ops from the U.S. to Cambodia when they don't know the first thing about Cambodia, the first thing about its history, first thing about the real stories about what went on over there? And that's something that, you got to help bring to light, because it's important.
Yeah, definitely. And just for those in the archive who might be hearing this, the thing that Ben was referring to was a project that had to do with the company setting up a sort of mega city in Cambodia somewhere. But yeah, that was that's intriguing, because I remember when that whole issue came up, it made sense that things like that, the projects like that probably go on more than people realize, and because of how they even stipulated in some of those documents that were shared, just because of the remote location is one of the reasons they do things like this. And so I can imagine how much of what it takes to do certain things, and how, like we said, without these things like the internet and all this other stuff, how these stories will just never be told, or their chances of being told properly are very slim. So yeah, it is very important that we hear what goes on.
And one of the, I think one of the most important things that was actually I spoke to Aaron about was the last project that they did that I was aware of was temporal shielding. And I don't know, I just have a feeling that has something to do with what might be happening this year with what Aaron's doing with the Festival of Light or things like that. I do believe that has a big role to play.
Interesting. Yeah, because I remember he explained a little bit I forgot what the term he used was on that recording. Temporal. Do you remember what he said?
I don't actually remember, but it's something very. It was interesting. I remember him talking about being activated, and my problem is that he stuck out like a sore thumb in amongst those group of people that he was invited to go there. And the only reason I can perceive for a man like Aaron to actually go to a place like that would be to make something of him that he's not. In other words, perhaps activate him while he was out there, and then if something were to happen in front of that group of people with all that military presence, number one, they'd have a perfect excuse to take him out. And number two, then they could put it down, document it, and say, this guy went insane at this beautiful festival. He said this happened, and boom. That's him out the way with all the knowledge that he has and all the vital information that he has, and boom. And that's exactly what I think that they were trying to do with that scenario. I think that other stuff will happen at that place either way, but I think that was just going to be one of their. I think that was one of their goals. It was definitely on their to-do list.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, because it would be a good place, and at the same time, if he had shown up and something happened in front of that crowd who was attending, it would have been enough to defame anything he said prior to.
Travis Bickle syndrome. Yep.
Yep. So yeah, I can totally see that. But unfortunately, as we know, there's been corroboration by other whistleblowers now, so it only would go so far. But yeah, it's interesting to see that. I guess it's kind of nice to know they still care, though, right? But no, I agree with you. I think that and honestly, I think that I really do maintain that recording was just to mess with his head, because I mean, like I said, I'm not like a certified sound engineer or anything, but I've been, doing my own sound engineering for years now. And when I heard it, honestly, it sounded like I said, it sounded like something modified to sound like Aaron, and it only did a so-so job. So, just because of knowing what I know about how to manipulate sound, and if it was Aaron in an alter, that could be an interesting thing. That could be the case, because I know our voices can change and stuff like that But then it brings up the whole time anomaly. Of him being in the presence of a friend the whole time, except for 2 minutes without a working phone. I mean,
but you see, okay, that's fine. But then, something he was approached and asked if he would be the head of security for this company, and the company was a part of Section 8. Now, at the time, the one in Cambodia was working on temporal shielding. The one they had in the U.S. had perfected a version of the chair. Now, to my knowledge, that was the area that Aaron was supposed to be looking into as head of security for. Now, the fact that he turned them down, we don't actually know what happened around that, or what they said to him, or what the guidelines were. Normally, when a group like that wants to make you the head of security, what they'll do is they'll show you what you're going to be securing, because they need to be sure that you're competent enough to do that job. And after that, anything's fair game. Erase your memory, mess with your memory, all kinds of things. Now, considering Aaron's also got previous history with that, it would be very easy for them to go back in and just change a few things here and there and make that possible. Considering the guy woke up in 2005 without a clue who he was, where he was, or what he was doing.
Yeah.
So that's something we've always got to look at.
Oh yeah, definitely. Then even in relation to that slim portion of time where a phone call could have theoretically been made, like I haven't really mentioned this, but like in terms of what I'm thinking, well, cause if it's not a total psyop, then it has to do with some kind of pan-dimensional weirdness. So, which means, so when you say stuff about like, the chair and doing these other things, and he is talking about time, and then you hear stories from people like Andy Basiago and things like that talk about time, travel and such. It's like that plays another factor into this whole thing too. I can imagine, especially Aaron saying they had those sort of pan-dimensional experiences at Seagate. So I know that there's an added drop of oddness to this whole thing. But just kind of like like I said, just kind of going off of the pure logistics and just my first reaction to when he sent the audio track and I heard it. Like I said, to me it sounded like something faking it. It sounded like someone faking like his voice, is what I got. And then to me, it's like even just like how we've talked about it before, it's like you're not really looking out for someone unless you thought of how many ways to kill them yourself. So it's like I'm thinking, like, with Aaron, it's like if I was going to get to Aaron, it wouldn't be like how they tried. Well, at least that's why I stopped of sending people after him, because it just didn't work. But then the next thing is like, you would try to mess with his head. And I think, and Aaron knows he has anger issues, so, and I think they're good at programming, and understanding that programming. So like to me, it's like if I'm sitting there like a maniacal evil, dude, I would be like, okay, well, how can I just like throw something at this guy and watch him go ape shit? You know what I mean? And doing stuff that has tangible ties to his experience would that's how you do it. You know what I mean? So to me, it still kind of reeks of something to pull him off of, to throw him off the scent. Even though I know obviously that project is probably very real, but I'm sure that like in a lot of ways they're not worried about it, because I mean even if you just look at it from a strategic standpoint, dude, no one's gonna go over there and protest. You know what I mean? It's like out in the middle of Cambodia. But that is interesting, that your information on that. So when you say temporal shielding, what is that specifically?
It's from my information, it's to stop the actual traveler from suffering the experiences of extreme cold and extreme rapid aging. If they travel through some kind of time, whatever.
Interesting.
It's to actually stop them from if the problem is say you got a bubble that could travel through time. Okay, everything outside that bubble will degrade, or however forward and backwards you go through time, it will crumble and disintegrate and wear on the effects of time. So people around you would grow old and die if they were in a static space. That would mean if you didn't have the bubble, you too, even though you're traveling through time, would actually age extremely rapidly, grow old and turn to dust if you went forward a couple hundred years. So you've got to be able to protect the traveler while they travel, and that's what the shielding does. Gotcha.
It's very intriguing. Wow.
And not only that, you've got debris and other things, environmental hazards that might pop up while you're in that. Lightning strikes, things like that.
Wow.
Even little things like lightning strikes have to be looked at.
Yeah. See, this is why I always maintain, it's like, why do they do this crap in dark, man. I think they need more minds helping on this stuff. You know what I mean? Because obviously it's a point of evolution, and we're already there. So, I think responsibility with this kind of technology is what I think it's up to the collective to help understand. So yeah, this is all intriguing. Especially, I don't know if you caught the interview with Stuart Swordlow, but he was talking about a lot of those effects. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's really intriguing. Because obviously I think a lot of us have heard the stories about this kind of technology, but it's like I think for a lot of us, hearing those details is really what helps ground everything for us. You know what I mean? So
indeed. Anyway, I've got to go now, so I shall say I'll speak to you tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to that show.
Definitely. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be cool. And I know Jeremiah always does a good job at mediating, too. So.
Oh, yeah.
But very cool. Thank you for calling in, and yeah, this will give everyone an added present for the archives. So it's very cool. So thank you very much.
No worries. Have a good one, bro.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Universal Truth Evolution Blog Talk Radio channel. We did go over the hour show. And if you're still listening to this, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my little chat there with Benjamin Murphy. And you can find more about him on Project Camelot, as well as some other Project Information Generation Blog Talk Radio interviews. So until tomorrow, where our guest will be Bo Manley. And then once again, join Ben and I on Project Information Generation Radio tomorrow night. So that's Universal Truth Evolution tomorrow, normal time, 12:30, with ESPN superstar Bo Manley, and then later on Project Information Generation with myself and super soldier Ben Murphy talking about Asian affairs. So until next time, see you everyone, and we'll keep manifesting that reality we all want to see. Thank you again. Bye.